The unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect truth is seldom met with, even in 100,000 myriad kalpas. Now we can see and hear it, we can remember and accept it. I vow to make the Buddha's truth one with myself. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha. So thank you all for coming this morning. Today we're going to be considering the Dana Paramita, which is generosity. Dana is a Sanskrit word that means generosity, and the first of the four wisdoms, which is charity or almsgiving. First, I'll begin talking about generosity, and that will move naturally into charity. And I want to start with a quotation from the Diamond Sutra. I'll be reading from a translation from Master Xing Yun's book, Describing the Indescribable. All Buddhist sutras or scriptures are said to be direct teachings given by the Buddha. So in this section of the Diamond Sutra, you'll hear the Buddha Shakyamuni speaking to his disciple, Subhuti. The Buddha says, "Moreover, Subhuti, within this phenomenal world, a bodhisattva ought to practice generosity without basing it on anything. This means that he should not base his generosity on form, and he should not base his generosity on sound, smell, taste, touch, or thought. Subhuti, the generosity of a bodhisattva should be like this, and should not be based on any perception whatsoever. And why is this? If the generosity of a bodhisattva is not based on any perception whatsoever, then his goodness will be immeasurable." In simpler terms, this means that we aspire to give without any wish for a reward, or even for thanks. We aspire without judgment or expectation of any kind about the gift, the giver, or the recipient. This is an aspiration towards which we direct ourselves, not an ideal to be relentlessly pursued. This isn't to show us how lacking we are in comparison to some unattainable standard. It's to show us how to live our lives as bodhisattvas, working for the benefit of all living things. The purpose of bodhisattvas is to help. Generosity is listed first among the 6 paramitas, and charity is first among the 4 wisdoms, which gives an indication of the importance of practicing giving. It is said that the Buddha taught generosity as the first step in practice when instructing newcomers, before meditation or anything else. Someone once asked Tang Dynasty Zen Master Bai Jiang why giving is the gateway to the Bodhisattva path. Bai Jiang answered that it is because to practice giving is to practice letting go. The monk then asked, "What do you let go of?" Bai Jiang said, "You let go of narrow views. You let go of the idea that things are small and tight, graspable and possessible." Eventually, we all have to let go of everything. But for now, we start where we are. We do excellent practice right where we are. Some of us came to Serene Reflection Meditation seeking enlightenment. I did anyway. And I had a notion that meditation would produce that enlightenment immediately. Then one of my teachers told me to stop seeking and start giving, and this stopped me in my tracks. The dictionary defines generosity both as liberality in giving and as nobility of thought or behavior. and lists selfless as a synonym for generous. There's also a meaning of magnanimous, copious, and abundant. When reflecting on what blocks my own impulse to generosity, it comes down to fear. As a young woman, I was physically attacked by a panhandler who felt that I hadn't given him enough cash. That has stayed with me. In terms of material gifts, if I give someone my last cookie, then what will I do? I won't have one to enjoy later. In spiritual terms, if I give someone the benefit of the doubt, what if they turn around and do some terrible thing that makes me look foolish for having trusted them? The example of giving the last cookie is straightforward enough. After all, what harm will it do me not to have a cookie? The example of giving the benefit of the doubt, which is an act of charity, isn't so clear. However, it becomes clearer when we take the focus off of what someone else does and keep it on ourselves. It's what we do that matters. And from this point of view, there's no harm in practicing charity. And wise discernment enters into this. We could give a chronic alcoholic the benefit of the doubt when they say they've stopped drinking for good. We could trust their intention while realizing it might not be wise to let them borrow the car. We can all express the spirit of generosity through the practice of offering merit, which is the goodness generated by helpful actions. We don't keep this merit for ourselves, hoarding it away in some heavenly savings account, but we offer it to others. There's a transfer of merit board in the guest house outside the meditation hall door, where you can post notices if you would like to. We have another board outside the monks' meditation hall, too, so please let us know if you'd like to post a notice there. And it would be a notice of offering the merit to someone who's in need. Notice the celebrant's dedication at morning service, and that we offer the merit of the recitation of whatever scripture we recite in gratitude to, and then we chant the ancestral line. So this morning we offered the merit of our recitation of the Scripture of Great Wisdom and the Sando Kai in gratitude to, and then we chanted the ancestral line. Chanting scriptures is considered to be a helpful action that generates merit, and instead of keeping it for ourselves, we offer it to the Buddhas and ancestors who came before us. Most of our ceremonies include at least one dedication, an offering of the merit of what we do during the ceremony to a particular person or beings or to all living things. Whenever I do seated meditation, I offer the merit to someone in need. Family members, friends, everyone for whom merit has been requested, whoever comes to mind. Perhaps someone going through a difficult time, victims of violence and oppression. The merit of any virtuous action can be offered at any time, and doing this practice will change your life. I'll go on to talk about charity, or almsgiving is another name for it. And I'm going to start with a quotation from a non-Buddhist, as far as I know, Ralph Waldo Emerson. And it's a quotation about the generosity and charity found in nature itself. It starts, "Nature, in its ministry to man, is not only the material, but is also the process and the result. All the parts incessantly work into each other's hands. The wind sows the seed, the sun evaporates the sea, the wind blows the vapor to the field, the ice on the other side of the planet condenses rain on this, the rain feeds the plant, the plant feeds the animal, and thus the endless circulations of the divine charity nourish man. And although it doesn't come from a Buddhist source, it did strike me as a beautiful portrait of the beneficence of the universe in its endless act of giving alms, not only to mankind, but to all of existence. In practicing generosity through acts of charity, we do the virtuous work of Samantabhadra Bodhisattva, expressing the mind of meditation in all the activities of daily life. An example of this is the Alms Round. Before the COVID pandemic, we did the traditional Buddhist Alms Round in the town of Mount Shasta, taking our staffs in hand and carrying the traditional alms bowl. We walked through the streets ringing a bell to announce our presence, and we did this with the permission of the town government. We wore large triangular straw hats, not only to shield our heads from the elements, but to promote the anonymity of giving. Donors don't see the face of an individual when they give, and they place their gifts in the alms bowl rather than into individual hands. It was our practice to ask the donors who they'd like the merit of their offering to be dedicated to. In effect, this compounded their gift, as they were not only giving to the monastery, but to the recipient of the merit. And this also enabled us, as recipients of the gifts, to pass the merit on to the person they named. After the alms round, we returned to the abbey and shared the gifts among the monastic community and lay guests. Also before COVID, at formal meals in the dining hall, we passed the food from person to person in a very real act of almsgiving, bringing our practice into the most routine of daily activities. The two kinds of alms, material and spiritual, have the endowment of boundless merit. Now that they have been fulfilled in this act of charity, both self and others gain pleasure therefrom, says one of our mealtime verses. Mealtimes are a traditional focus for Buddhist practice since the time of the Buddha, as the food as well as the teaching is handed down from person to person, given and received in the shared act of charity. In Great Master Dogen's words, charity is the opposite of covetousness. We make offerings, although we ourselves get nothing whatsoever. We expect no reward, not even thanks. In reflecting on generosity and charity, I sometimes think of generosity as the spirit of giving and charity as specific acts of giving, although they're used interchangeably. Chinese Buddhist master Xing Yun defines generosity as the urge to reach out to others and help them. That's what bodhisattvas do. We help others. Charity is the opposite of covetousness. We start by simply being content with what we have, by not being greedy and not grabbing. We watch our minds and catch ourselves at the impulse to grab and cling, and we let it go. Almsgiving has the specific meaning of giving aid to the needy. The first few dictionary definitions state this meaning of giving aid to the needy. However, when you get to the fourth and fifth meanings, these are an act or feeling of benevolence and forbearance in judging others. So trusting, giving the benefit of the doubt, non-judgmental. The whole purpose of the Bodhisattva, and that's you and me, I remind you, is to help others. But that doesn't mean we don't help ourselves. We can start the practice of giving by giving to ourselves, and that doesn't necessarily mean an extra bonbon. One thing I've tried is thinking of actions described by the verb take, such as take a shower or take a walk, and then changing take to give, as in give myself a shower. This can seem like a silly verbal trick, which it is, and it can help. Sometimes the extra bonbon is just the thing, wise discernment. Practicing charity, as with all the Bodhisattva practices we're talking about, will gradually, possibly without your even ever noticing anything, transform your basic stance from self-centered individual to full participant in a benevolent universe. There are 3 traditional kinds of gifts in Buddhism: material gifts, the gift of fearlessness, and the gift of the Dharma. The first type is obvious. For example, sending money to a charity to support victims of natural disaster. One way we give the gift of fearlessness is by conducting ourselves in such a way that people don't need to feel afraid of us. At times, we've all run into someone in a grumpy or irritable mood. You ask them a question or ask them to do something, and you get a growl or a scowl with your answer. A little fear pops up, and if they're grumpy again the next time, you might become afraid to ask them again. In a similar way, we give the gift of the Dharma by living in accordance with the Buddha's teachings, and thereby showing the truth. I may have learned as much from my master by the way she drank her cup of tea as from her Dharma talks. There are stories of Shakyamuni Buddha's lives previous to becoming the Buddha, in which, as a bodhisattva, he gives his life for the benefit of another. One such story relates that the bodhisattva came across a starving tigress whose hunger prevented her from being able to give milk to her cubs. The bodhisattva offered his very body and life to the tigress, who was then able to feed her babies. This is legend rather than literal history, and portrays an extreme situation. However, we've heard of people sacrificing their lives for others in heroic circumstances. Someone who drowns, for example, in trying to save another person from drowning. We don't often find ourselves in heroic circumstances, and we can find ways to offer charity without giving up our lives. We start where we are and go forwards, always going on beyond, always becoming Buddha. Each time we feed the cat or the dog, we're giving. Each time we offer a smile or a kind word, we are giving. Great Master Dogen says, "It is an act of charity to build a ferry or a bridge, and all forms of industry are charity if they benefit others." He also says, "Earning a living and doing productive work have never been anything other than an offering of alms." I'm going to read a brief passage from a book called The World Could Be Otherwise by Zen teacher Norman Fisher, talking about charity. His teacher had instructed him to practice giving by wiping down the sink counters after washing his hands in public restrooms. And Norman Fisher suggests trying this ourselves. He says, "The counter wiping practice can be done everywhere. Why not wipe counters in your own bathroom or kitchen as the practice of generosity? Do it beautifully and joyfully, for yourself, for others in your household, for the counters. You could wipe your counters as an offering to people far away who have no counters. When the perfection of generosity is appreciated as the limitless, imaginative practice that it is, almost anything can be a vehicle for it. And that passage had a great deal with me coming up with the topic for this retreat. We wipe the counters twice a day at kitchen cleanup, and I've had the opportunity to change my attitude about wiping the counters to make it a practice of generosity rather than a tedious piece of drudgery, and that really helps. I've also been working on thinking of similar small ways in which to give. Pushing my chair in when I leave the table, for example, so that nobody trips over it, is one thing I've come up with. Reverend Master Jiyu taught us that on the first visit to a Zen temple, the traditional practice is to teach people to put their slippers straight, not only so they look nice, but so nobody will trip and fall on them. We start where we are in all aspects of our practice, and wisdom guides us. Wisdom means, in part, seeing the emptiness of things, that nothing has an independent, unchanging existence, that there are no selves or beings, no gifts, no givers, no recipients. We may not see that. I usually don't see that. However, something in me trusts it to be true when the critical mind steps aside. As we keep going, wisdom grows naturally in the nourishing climate of our practice. A couple more things we can always give. One is attention. When doing something, give your attention, keeping the mind on what's right in front of us, taking care. Listening with care to someone who is speaking to us. We can always give thanks. I recently came across an example of how a small offering of thanks changed the recipient's life. A retreatant was leaving a monastery, this was another monastery, when he happened upon a priest standing by the road. The priest said goodbye to him and thanked him for coming and for his work. The guest, who had been thinking, well, that practice isn't quite for me, thought again after being thanked and returned to the monastery, staying on for several years, all because of a simple thank you. The very act of giving and receiving is more important than the gifts themselves. I'd like to end with a few more words from Great Master Dogen. Should we let go of a single dust mote of defiling passion as an alms offering, even though it is done for our own sake, we will feel a quiet, heartfelt gratitude because we will have had one of the meritorious deeds of Buddhas genuinely transmitted to us, and because for the first time we will be practicing one of the methods of Bodhisattvas. Homage to all the Buddhas in all worlds. Homage to all the Bodhisattvas in all worlds. Homage to the scripture of great wisdom.